It's your team on Upset Alert. We're going to talk about that and the upcoming games this week right now. Welcome back, everyone. I'm going to try doing the preview this week a little different. So first, I'm going to go over all the over-the-air games, the games that everyone's able to watch, because usually those are the most watched games, and so as you're flipping through the channels, this will just help you to be able to know a little bit about those games and what to watch for with those. So start off, the first game of the day will be San Jose State at Texas. I think Texas will handle San Jose State pretty easy. San Jose State was looking to be pretty good this year and be able to compete for a Mountain West title. But then they lost to Central Michigan last week at home, and so that was not a really good start for them because they were expecting to win that game and be able to start off on the right foot, but they weren't able to do that. Texas did look like they struggled last week, but you have to take into consideration they were playing Ohio State. Obviously, as we all know, is one of the best teams year in, year out and has a really good defense. So I expect Texas to be able to run over San Jose State in this game, and I think Arch Manning will come back and have a good game. Even though he looked shaky last week, I think he'll have a good game this week, playing a easier defense. The next game will be Iowa at Iowa State. So I've been really impressed by Iowa State so far. They started off with some really big accomplishments this year. The first big accomplishment was winning a game on a different continent over in Ireland. And the second biggest accomplishment is coming home and still playing well after that. Because as we saw with Kansas State, they went over and played in Ireland and just barely lost that game against Iowa State, but then they came home and really struggled and just barely won. But Iowa State has impressed me this year. I think that their quarterback is really good and just really experienced with those high pressure situations, and just week in, week out will put them in any game to win. Iowa, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Iowa this year because it looks like they have a lot better offense, but we haven't seen them play really good defense yet, so this will tell a lot about Iowa this week playing against Iowa State, and obviously this is a really big rivalry for both teams as well, but I think Iowa State will come out on top on that one. The next game will be Baylor at SMU. SMU surprised a lot of people last year by making a run at the college football playoffs. They joined the ACC for the first time for the first season last year. So we'll see if they can continue that momentum this year. Baylor they've had some really good years, but the last couple of years they haven't been as good. And so they're trying to get out of that lull that they've been in. And with their coach in the hot seat, they're definitely going to be looking to come out and beat SMU, because if they lose their first two games of the year, and then with losing this game as well, that's going to really put the team behind the eight ball, and I don't expect the coach to be able to go the rest of the year. Then the next game will be Ole Miss at Kentucky. Again, with some of these teams, it's really hard to tell what's going to look like because some of these teams haven't played anyone particularly hard. So we'll see how well Ole Miss plays against Kentucky. If they play as well as they can play, I think they'll beat Kentucky pretty easily, but we'll see as they go into their first high pressure situation over in Kentucky. It's a conference game. It won't be as easy as their opponent last week. We'll see what happens. I think Kentucky does have a chance to win this game, but I think Ole Miss will pull this one out in the end. The next game of the day will be Oklahoma State at Oregon. Oregon is favored by a lot in this game, but Oklahoma State, they have a very experienced coach with Gundy, and he can win these big games like this, but with it being in Oregon, I expect Oregon to win that game. I think it's going to be a lot closer than most people expect. I think Oklahoma State will put up a fight, but I think Oregon will pull that out in the end. The next game of the day will be Delaware at Colorado. This is Delaware's first year in the FBS, so we're not expecting a whole lot from them. And so this will be a good opportunity for Colorado to be able to get a win under their belt for the year after just barely losing last week, and to be able to work out some kinks that they've had. After that, you'll have Fresno State at Oregon State. Oregon State had a disappointing start to the season. Fresno State got ran over by Kansas in week 0, but they came back and beat Georgia Southern last week, and they looked really good running the ball last week. They were still struggling to pass the ball, so that concerns me playing Oregon State. I don't think they'll be able to run the ball as well this week, and so with that, if they can't run the ball, I don't think they have much of an offense. So I think Oregon State will come out on top of that one. I think it will be a close game, but since Fresno just can't pass it as well as they need to, I don't think they'll be able to win this game. I think Oregon State will end out on top. Then definitely one of the biggest games of the day will be Michigan at Oklahoma, and it'll be interesting to see the dynamic on this one because Michigan has their true freshman starting at quarterback, and Oklahoma has their experienced quarterback with John Mateer. I think Oklahoma will pull this one out with their experience at quarterback with John Mateer. He did really well last week, and so especially with this one being at home at Oklahoma, I think Oklahoma will pull this one out. I think Michigan will make a game out of it, but Oklahoma has more experience on their side on the quarterback play, and we'll pull this one out. The next one will be Boston College at Michigan State. Boston College hasn't been very good for years. Michigan State has had their ups and downs. This one we played at Michigan State, I think this one will be a pretty close one because neither teams have been great. They haven't been like completely awful, at least with Michigan State. Boston College has been pretty bad some of these past years, but Michigan State has had the better last couple of years, and I think Michigan State will be able to win this one pretty easily against Boston College with them at home. And then the last game will be San Diego State at Washington State. Washington State struggled last week against Idaho. That, like, even though it is an FCS team, that is a pretty close team to them and a pretty good rival as much as you can get between an FBS and FCS team. So we'll see if Washington State can bounce back. But San Diego State looked pretty good last week, but again, that was against an FCS team, so we really don't know what either teams look like when they play someone around similar talent level or someone a little better than them. So this will tell us a lot about both teams this year and what we can expect from them going forward. Upset alerts. Is your team on upset alert? Let's find out. So the first team I have on upset alert is James Madison at Louisville. Louisville is favored by 14.5 points right now, but James Madison has been really good ever since they came up from the FCS level. They haven't missed a beat. They just have been playing really well each year, competing for conference championships. They've even been ranked in the top 25, which some teams which have been in the FBS for a long time still struggle to get in the top 25. But James Madison has been able to carry that momentum even with Cignetti leaving 2 years ago. And so this will be the second year with their coach, and it seems like they haven't lost a beat with that. So I think James Madison has a chance to pull this out against Louisville. So that's definitely one that's on upset alert that to watch for the Saturday. Another one that's technically an upset alert just because of the line is Kansas at Missouri. Personally, I think Kansas should be the favorite in this game. Kansas looks really good. They have a very explosive offense. Obviously, their quarterback has been around for 6 years, so he has a lot of experience, knows how to play in these big games. So I think Kansas is just going to straight out win this one. And to me, that doesn't really seem like an upset, but just because the Vegas line has Missouri by almost a touchdown, I guess technically would be considered an upset. Another one that I feel like a lot of people aren't talking about is West Virginia playing at Ohio. So Ohio just about pulled an upset last week against Rutgers. They were within a touchdown with that one, and they were pretty close the whole time. They fell behind a little bit, but then had to make a comeback, but they played Rutgers really close. And right now, I think West Virginia is probably on the Rutgers level, but we'll see, because it's so early in the season. Things can change so much, especially going from week 1 to week 2. That's where you can really see what a team's made of, see if they can make those adjustments or not. But where this game's being playing at Ohio, that definitely helps them out a bit. And West Virginia is only favored by 3.5 points in this one, so I think Ohio has a really good chance to beat West Virginia, and they're on upset alert. The next one is South Florida playing in the Swamp at Florida. Florida right now is favored by 17.5 points. South Florida looked really, really good last week against Boise. Now, with a lot of that, Boise was turning the ball over a lot and just kind of giving the ball to South Florida, so that definitely helped a lot because South Florida didn't really get it going until they were getting that ball turned over from Boise and able to get some momentum there. But it looks like they have some really good athletes this year, and I think they have a chance to be able to go into Florida and be able to shock them and be able to win, even though they're underdogs by 17.5 points. One that's really surprising for me is Army at Kansas State. Right now the line's at 17.5 points. Kansas State really struggled last week against their FCS opponent, and Army also lost to Tarleton State, their FCS opponent. But where Kansas State has just kind of struggled this year and it's kind of been dragging through the mud, I think this will be a trap game for Kansas State, and Army could come in and beat them, especially with how unique Army plays. We'll see if Kansas State is prepared for that, because it seems like they haven't been prepared for a lot of these other conditions, whether it's playing in Ireland or trying to come home from Ireland and play against a team that they should win. So we'll see what it looks like, but I think Army has a really good chance, even though they're 17.5 underdogs as well. So that's definitely a game to keep an eye on. One that's really interesting is Houston is playing at Rice. Those schools are pretty close to each other. So you got a little bit of rivalry there. Rice hasn't been good a lot lately, so maybe if Rice is better, this would be like a more well-known rivalry, but Rice just hasn't been good in a long time. And so this one doesn't really get talked about a whole lot, and rightfully so, because Houston's been the better team for so long. But Rice did play pretty good last week, and they're 13.5 point underdogs in this one. But where they're playing at home, that should give them an advantage, but probably not too much of an advantage where these two teams are so close to each other. You're probably going to have quite a few Houston fans there as well. But I think Rice does have a chance to pull this upset out against Houston, especially Houston has been a little bit of a lull the last couple of years. And then the last one upset alert is UCLA. They're going into Vegas to play UNLV. UCLA is only 2.5 point favorites. UNLV can't play defense to save their lives so far this year, but their offense, no one can stop their offense either. So UNLV, I think, will be in a lot of shootouts this year, and I'd expect that against UCLA. UCLA really struggled against Utah's defense last week, but But UNLV's defense is nowhere like even on the same planet with Utah's defense, and so I think you're going to have a shootout this week between UCLA and UNLV, and I think UNLV will win that game. And that one will be pretty interesting too, where those teams are decently close to each other. We'll see if they can fill up Allegiant Stadium a little bit more between both schools, especially where this is a bigger game for UNLV because they don't get as many of these big games at home, being a Group of 5 conference. And so but I think UNLV has a chance to beat UCLA in a shootout, and that would not surprise me at all. Let me know down in the comments below who you think should be on episode alert and which game you're most excited for to watch this week.